You're listening to the Maritime Gardening Podcast brought to you by Vessi Seeds. And today I'm talking about mushrooms with Jessica Wolf. Who's Jessica Wolf? She's a biologist and mushroom forager. She lives in a remote wilderness in North Vancouver Island, BC, a little more impressive than where I am, but I'm still kind of remote, I guess. She teaches how to find, identify, and enjoy wild edible mushrooms. She's grown mushrooms and sold them at farmers markets. When she first started getting into all of this, she had a hard time finding varieties for planting. So she decided to launch Grow Mushrooms Canada in 2018 to fill that need so everyone in Canada could grow their own mushrooms. And I actually found out about her through a coworker. I wanted to grow mushrooms. A lady I work with grew them. She said, go to this website, buy these ones, try this out. And I did, and it worked. So then I called Jessica. I said, why don't you come to my show? So for those that, I rarely interview people that run businesses. So just for my viewers, so they know I'm not getting anything out of this at all. I'm just contacted this person out of pure interest, and I like to have people on the show that know more about certain things than me, and certainly mushrooms, I barely know anything. So Jessica, say hello.
Hello, I'm so excited to be on your podcast, Coast to Coast. I'm
Yes,
on
coast to coast.
the Pacific Coast.
Right, and you're kind of like in a similar set. You're on an island, and I'm on a peninsula, but we're like
Yeah,
almost as far. I mean, you could get a little further away from each other. I could be in Newfoundland, and you could be way up in the Yukon or something like that, I
yeah.
suppose. But we're almost as far away as we could possibly be. And this it's weird because this is probably the most Vancouver-like fall we've ever had.
Oh,
It's still like lovely and warm, and normally by this time of the year, you know, I get a lot of there's frost and all kinds of we haven't really had any cold. It's still warm outside. You can still go swimming at the beach right now. Uh,
it's so bizarre, the weather patterns.
yeah,
I have just come out of wondering if the rains are going to stop. And that's very unique to be able to say, because a lot of British Columbia actually is starving for rain and there's fires burning everywhere. So to be able to have rain is such a blessing. And of course, it brings out the mushrooms. So that's pretty
yeah.
exciting for people like me.
We got the opposite thing here, where it's just they're very, very rare. We're not getting any rain. And it's funny, they've had the whole province shut down in terms of like there are certain places they wouldn't even let you. They didn't want people going in the woods because people
Mm-hmm.
just smoke and flick a butt and light burn the whole thing
Yes.
up. Um, but also just no campfires when you go camping and stuff like nothing,
Yeah.
right? And they just removed many of the restrictions on Sunday, and and a whole bunch of woods caught on fire. So I
Oh,
think there was
no.
I know in my street, sort of semi-rural, it's kind of rural where I live, right? People are on wells and there's forests everywhere. And we noticed that was like Sunday afternoon, they lifted the restriction. And after, I think, well, we weren't allowed to have fire till like 7 p.m. But all of a sudden, all you could smell was smoke all over the place.
Oh,
It's
yes.
like, oh my God, are they going to burn the neighborhood down? But our forest didn't catch on fire, but I guess there are some other forest fires already
Yes.
restarted here.
It's a
Um,
very concerning new normal around here. And one, just I think 3 summers ago, we had such a drought.
yes.
I'm basically in the rainforest, but we do have a dry season on Vancouver Island,
Mm,
and part of the island's extremely dry. But where I live, it's usually quite wet. And so having
right.
a drought, I had 5 forest fires start within 10 kilometers of the farm. It was really
Yikes.
depressing. Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's crazy.
So when I'm just like, yay, rain.
Yeah, no, I'd prefer, I mean, we're always complaining about the rain, but I'll
Yeah.
never do that again.
Yep.
Especially when you're worried about your house burning down and
Oh,
losing
you're well
everything
going
you
dry.
own and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Um, okay, let's get into it here. The first, so I solicited my viewers for some questions. I got some of that.
Great.
It's just kind of worked into the questions. I think there's only one I'm going to read off because it's kind of hard to summarize. Um, but the rest I've just sort of gotten point form, and they're maybe two or three people might have asked the same thing, so I'm just paraphrasing.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to get off with just the basics first. What is a mushroom?
That's a great question. A lot of people think that mushrooms are plants, and they're not. They're a completely different kingdom of fungi. Um, and so it helps to know about how a mushroom grows in order to grow them yourself. This is the visible part you see is the mushroom, the part that we eat and
Yes.
find in the woods and stuff. But this is not the actual being. This is like the apple on a tree, and the
Okay.
actual fungal body are thread-like uh, mycelium that grow pretty much invisible to us. They're in the ground at all times. They're in the tree, in the fallen trees. So that's happening. A lot of them are decomposing wood, which is really important also for species that we like to grow. And then when the conditions are right, like lots of rain, lots of humidity, then they'll produce the fruiting body, and that's their reproductive structure.
Hmm.
And from the mushroom, spores are produced that are kind of like the equivalent of a seed, and
Right.
they're microscopically small, and they blow in the wind and disperse to a new location where they start growing again. So that's the life cycle of a fungus, and it's a good starting place to know how we grow it. With plants, you typically grow from seed, but with mushrooms, you typically grow from the fungal mycelium,
Right.
just cloning it.
Right. Right. So, in that the spores, when I was a kid, we'd find these brown things on the lawn, and we'd kick them around and call them stink bombs. That's the full maturation of the mushroom.
That would be there's different types of mushrooms. The
Yeah.
typical one we're used to, like a portobello type. This is a wine cap mushroom that you can grow in your garden. It looks very similar to a portobello, and
Hmm.
it has the gills on the underside, and that's where the spores are produced. But
Yeah.
some mushrooms are different. They don't make the typical stalk and cap with gills. They might be a puffball, and when you poke them, they blow out a puff of spores. Pretty There's the lion's mane mushroom, which is another one that you can grow, has dangling icicle like pom pom shape to
Mm.
it. So
Wow.
there's a lot of diversity out there in the fungal world.
So generally speaking, what do mushrooms need to go, or is there different categories of varieties that have different needs, or
There
uh,
are. There's different types of mushrooms, and I'm not going to go into it really extensively, but people might be familiar with the chanterelle, and
yes,
that's how I got engaged in mushrooms right from the
hunting.
start. My friend took me foraging in the woods for chanterelles, and I was just hooked. I wanted to know every species of mushroom that I could forage in the wild and cook up. So chanterelles are very recognizable, distinctive mushrooms, but can you grow them? Not really, because their fungal mycelium, the threads, is growing in the forest floor, and it actually wraps around tree roots and forms a partnership with the tree. And
Mm,
there's a big exchange going on of nutrients and water and things back and forth. So they're kind of like a mutually beneficial relationship. And perhaps I could inoculate a young tree seedling with the root system with the fungal mycelium of a chanterelle, and maybe I'll get success, but it's just not something that's easy or really well done.
mm,
The species that we do tend to grow are ones that decompose substrates. So, like oyster mushrooms will grow on dead or like uh, alder trees or maple trees that have died or fallen in a windstorm, and then we'll get oyster mushrooms, the mycelium growing within the log, consuming it and eating it. That's its food source, and then fruiting and producing the oyster mushrooms that we would harvest and
mm,
eat from the wild. So that's the kind of system that we can replicate fairly well. I can grow mushrooms on fallen logs or trees that I cut, which is a great use of trees if you've got to clear an area for whatever reason, a driveway's over, causing a problem tree. You can then cut that tree and use it as the logs as a substrate for growing mushrooms on. And that's how I started, was growing mushrooms, was growing shiitake mushrooms on logs. And I've just got a little tiny specimen of a
mm,
shiitake that's young and hasn't yet opened up, that
mm,
was growing on one of the logs that I planted.
mm.
So that's the like kind of the natural substrate to grow on. But you can also, things like oyster mushrooms will grow on all sorts of agricultural waste products, like coffee grounds or sawdust, or even straw. So you can, those are some of the typical things that people use to grow mushrooms with.
I seem to recall like a couple of years ago, a co-worker connected me with a guy who's a mushroom guy, like you. Um, and I went out with this guy. I think we were hunting oyster mushrooms, but these ones were growing in beech trees. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it was a beach stand. There's not a lot of beach in Nova Scotia. This is a unique spot where there's beach everywhere. So this guy took me out for an afternoon hunting these mushrooms. You had to use this special sort of thing for cutting them down because they'd be up 8 feet in the trees and stuff. Sometimes on the ground too. Anyway, I mean, there was mushrooms everywhere. It was a hardwood forest, whereas most of the forests in Nova Scotia are spruce,
Yes.
spruce, tamarack, maybe pine, but it's very sprucey. Spruce and fir is my backyard is spruce and fir with some birch, some maple, the odd oak or whatever. But it's if you look at it from a distance, it's just a spruce Christmas tree forest sort of thing. Anyway, this was all hardwoods, and there was mushrooms everywhere. And everything I was like, what's that one? He goes, oh, that's really poisonous. And I'd see another one, this big lush. Oh, what about that one there? Oh, that's really poisonous. Everything was poisonous, right? So I remember thinking like, I just don't have the people that do what you do, that they have this encyclopedic knowledge in their head, identifying everything by looking at it. You really put a lot of time and energy and study into becoming something of an expert on these things. I found it fascinating. But what my one takeaway is that I'd like to just maybe grow some in my backyard and, feel a little safe. And even my backyard there, I had a big pile of mushrooms that I thought was something called something of the wood,
Chicken of the woods.
chicken of the wood. It's growing at the base of a tree,
Yes.
but I said, or it's this poisonous thing that'll kill your whole family, So I just left it there. Uh, so the prospect of growing them where I plant them and they're really easy to identify, that
Yes.
appeals to a risk averse, also somewhat lazy, because I don't didn't want to put the time in to develop the expertise you have.
It is an expertise that goes way beyond me as well. There's
Right.
about 10,000 different species of wild mushrooms in North America. So it's that's a deep dive in learning. I was really focused on what can I harvest and identify and not mistake it for a
Yeah.
poisonous mushroom.
That's why the chanterelles
Um,
are so popular, I guess, because they're so easy
yeah,
to
yeah,
identify. Yeah.
exactly. But you just need to have a certain amount of knowledge and not go beyond your knowledge. There are some deadly poisonous mushrooms, only about a dozen species. It's not lots, but they could be abundant in your front yard. You don't know unless you know. So it's good to, if you are wild foraging and even growing your own mushrooms outside, like you said, there are other mushrooms that could grow in your yard. So it's important to know what you're growing and how to identify them. And so that the wine cap, the ones that I was showing earlier, the wine cap mushrooms are quite distinctive. They have some very recognizable traits. And I've got a blog on our website on how to identify the wine cap mushroom, for
That's
instance.
great. Yeah, that's I mean, since we're talking about those, I should show off my
Yeah, show
most
them off.
recent. So these were all picked within the last couple days. It's a
Wow.
roast. It's like a turkey roasting pan, and this largest one here is 10 inches in diameter. Um, Although most of them are more like 3 and 4, like a portobello sort of thing, but maybe not as dense as a
Yeah,
portobello, I guess.
there's definitely diversity in the size of them. I have a few here that are smaller,
Yeah.
but they still have all the features of a wine cap mushroom.
Why don't you
And
use one of those just to discuss features
sure,
like all these things about like gills and all
sure,
this nomenclature that I don't
let's do
understand.
it with this wine cap
Okay. Yeah,
mushroom.
yeah, sure.
Um, the the wine caps have typically a large size. Another name for them is the garden giant,
Mm.
but they can be smaller. So they can grow monstrous. And this they have a burgundy cap of course, the sunshine, if it's directly on, it can change the way the cap looks. So it might turn a brownish color.
Yeah, that's what mine are
I've even
doing.
had them go whitish and start cracking.
Mm,
So environmental conditions can change the way the mushroom looks a bit.
I see.
But typically it's a burgundy cap on the under. It's standing on a white, robust stem,
Mm,
and on the underside are these gills that start out light colored and then turn a deep smoky gray as
right.
they're releasing their spores.
Huh.
And when it's young, there's a tissue covering those gills. And as it breaks away, it leaves a very unique feature on the stem. There's
Yeah.
these cogwheel shaped skirt.
Yes, I
And you can
noticed that.
actually see they're getting dark colored because the spores are dropping and landing on them.
Oh,
So all those really recognizable features help you identify the wine cap mushroom. And from the base of the mushroom, you see these string-like threads where it was growing in wood chips and had some manure piled there as well.
mm,
And that's the fungal mycelium from which this mushroom arose. And
mm.
so propagating the wine cap is actually quite easy. I could cut the mushroom off, take the base of this mushroom and plant it in some more wood chips or sawdust or straw, and it will grow.
Just that little bit of bit, that like
Yeah,
an inch, that inch there. Just cut that
yeah,
off.
just this bottom section here where the threads are coming off
Wow.
of it. So I call that the stem butt.
Right. And you don't
So
cut them to harvest them. You just yank them out, sort of thing.
you can do either when they're in the ground. If you want to keep things as clean as possible, you could just cut it. But if you're wanting to take a look at the whole kind of, you might, as a gardener, you might think of it as a root structure, but
Yeah.
it's not really roots.
Yeah.
And you can take that section, the section that's under the dirt, and transplant it to a new location.
Okay.
Not all mushrooms can be propagated that way, but there are some, like oyster mushrooms, you can also propagate from a stem butt,
I see.
and the one cap. Are two of the most commonly grown ones. And also where it's growing, I could dig in and grab a clump of the wood chips that I have it growing in,
Right.
and then transplant that or give it to a friend for them to
Okay. Yeah,
propagate.
that was one of the questions about propagating. So, okay. And if you, when you haul it out like that, it's not going to affect the yield of successive. That doesn't. There's all kinds of stuff still down there. It's all.
That's right. That's right. Because
Yeah.
it's just like I said, it's like picking an apple off of a tree, and the
Yeah.
tree is invisible to us. It's down underneath, inside the wood chip pile,
I see.
or whatever it is it's growing on.
Okay. So this segues in a sense to the next question is that, you know, are they all like, if this was a plant, I'd say the way you're describing it, it's a perennial. Are they all like that? Are some just a one-time thing? And even the ones that are perennial, if we're going to use that, maybe there's a better word that makes more sense to mushroom people. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but are they in perpetuity, or is there like something they're using up? Are they gone after a certain point in time, or that sort of thing?
Great question.
All right.
That's a great question. We'll use the wine cap mushroom as an
Sure.
example again because it's such a great one to integrate into your garden. Can be grown in straw or wood chips or sawdust that you mulch at the base of plants. And so that's a really a good partnership in your garden because you're mulching it and keeping the water in. And
Yeah.
as the wine cap mycelium grows through the straw and wood chips, it's consuming that as its food, and
Mm,
then it's decomposing and adding to the soil health. So that's a great partnership there. Now,
mm,
as it grows and consumes the straw and the wood chips, there is a bit of a limited supply. So you can, for a wine cap bed, you can keep it as like a perennial if you keep feeding it. So like in the fall, you'd lay another layer of straw or wood chips down on top of the bed to add more food for the mushroom mycelium to
okay.
grow with.
Okay. So as long as you're maintaining your mulch, I mean, this is for garden. Most of my gardeners, my whole garden, everything's mulched all the time. The walking paths are mulched. The beds are, everything's just, it's mulched all the time. So in the walking paths, especially. So in principle, every other year I had like 3 inches of wood chips, of
Perfect.
just random wood chips. There's also, that was the other thing. One of the People asked, no, we're getting ahead of ourselves, so we'll talk about mediums in a second here.
Okay.
Um, so they're annual so long as the resources they need are available.
Yeah, it's kind of an awkward term for fungi. Like
Sorry,
there
not
are
perennial,
some,
is what I said, but
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, there are some fungi, like I kind of think of all the fruiting bodies in that sense. Like I think this is a very perishable. It'll come up in the garden and be gone within weeks. The mycelium that it's arising from, it continues to grow and is
Mm,
perennial. But there's some mushrooms like you see on trees, like conchs, hard woody,
mm.
like conch shelf-like fungus that are perennial fruiting bodies. So year after year, they add more growth to them, like a tree does growing tree rings.
Oh,
So
like that. What's
it's
that
kind of a
famous one everybody thinks is a health remedy for just about everything?
there's
It's
chaga and
chaga. Yeah, it's like gold.
yeah,
There's a lot. They actually have it back here behind the house here.
yeah,
All birch trees where
perfect.
it grows. Yeah, chaga.
Yeah,
But
that's
that's
a
the
good
sort of thing that's
example of
perennial,
a
getting bigger and
perennial
bigger.
fruit body.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I see.
which is arising from a fungal mycelium that's within the tree.
That's right. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Okay. So they're kind of perennial, but not exactly, and kind of annual, but not exactly.
yeah.
But
You can keep a wine cap going in perpetuity. It might, as long as you keep feeding it more food.
does the wine cap
Um,
spread like so? Let's say, I mean, all I did when I planted them was I dug up a little hole the way like a dog would bury a bone, and then I just sprinkled that pixie dust I bought from you in in the hole, and then put the wood chips back. So let's say I dug a hole that's 6 inches in diameter. Uh, are the mushrooms just going to be growing there, or are they going to sort of spread and go everywhere? Everywhere there's stuff to eat, they'll just take over the whole thing.
they can spread. There's a lot going on in your soil.
Right.
So
Yeah.
uh, the the wine cap, if you dug into that area where you planted them originally, you
Right.
could take hunks of that mycelium growing in the wood chips and spread it to new locations in your garden.
Right.
So you can intentionally spread it like that. You can also spread it by taking the cap. Like if you have ones that are past their prime for eating, you can move the cap and just lay the cap down somewhere else, and the spores are going to drop out and potentially
Right.
going to start growing where you put the cap down.
Right.
Um, on their own, I do find wine cap mycelium. I will find wine caps popping out way beyond where I've planted them.
Filaments travel.
They
I see.
do. They
Yeah.
travel looking for new food sources,
I see.
and ultimately, if they're running out of food or getting, this is their strategy of finding more food in the wild. They
Mm,
create a reproductive structure, make spores, and the spores blow in the wind to find a new fallen tree or
I
something.
see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Um, oh, another question that's related to that is growing zone. So like it's I assume my winter's colder than yours, and I'm assuming a lot of Canada, there's winters that are colder than both yours and mine. I'm in zone, at least in terms of the Canadian growing zones. I think I'm in zone 6A. You're probably in 7 or 8 or something like that. Does it matter? Let's just like we talk about wine caps since we're talking about them, and one of the easier things to grow. But all does it matter for certain varieties?
It does matter, but I have to say that I'm not completely knowledgeable. I don't
Hmm.
know that anyone knows
Oh,
um,
okay.
the for Canadian climate zones, and it's something I'm really interested in. And
Right.
one of the citizen science initiatives that we're embarking on to try to collect that information from people, because I know my environment. And
Yeah, yeah,
Canada's got such diverse environment,
yeah, yeah.
coast to coast and up in the mountains and north so I don't know if there's a limit to where wine cap mycelium can overwinter
Hmm.
in the ground. We recommend, putting that layer of brand new mulch on in the fall.
Hmm.
That serves two purposes. One is it creates a blanket and a blanket to insulate it, as well as providing the food.
Yeah.
And then snow will fall, and that will also insulate it
Yes.
to a great degree from the harsh environment, because it's sucking up to the Earth's core a bit there.
Yes.
So but yeah, I don't know if it will overwinter in the Yukon. But it does overwinter for sure in most of Canada, to my knowledge. And it's just fungal mycelium is really really resilient.
Right. Okay. And I mean, this was a question a lot of people asked, and I mean, I think,
Oh, actually, before we go to that, I just
yeah.
wanted to continue on that last question about
Sorry.
zones.
Yeah.
Um, I know that shiitake growing on logs is grown in a lot of places across Canada. Like Quebec has got a lot of shiitake log growers,
Hmm.
and they get very cold
Pretty
winters
damn
there.
cool. Yeah.
So it's surviving within the log through the winter and then producing in the spring to fall.
Okay.
But there are like a few species like pink oyster mushrooms.
Hmm.
They're not from around here. They're not. They're and they're also from a tropical or a subtropical environment. So
Hmm.
they like it hot.
I see.
So we grow them in the summertime. If you wanted to grow them outdoors, if you're growing them indoors, you could create the environment for them.
Hmm.
But outdoors, there's a limitation to the pink oyster, and they would not survive the winters here.
I see. Okay. Um, okay. This is a question I had from a lot of viewers, and I think we could we could talk forever about it. So maybe just confine it to the simplest things, simplest varieties, simplest approaches. But the question was, how do I get started? So maybe since it's a gardening channel, you know, maybe just because we're going to talk about, some other ways to grow them as we go along here. But maybe just for the person that wants to grow them in their backyard, that sort of thing. How does that person get started? What do they need?
You would need some fungal mycelium growing it, and
Yeah,
it's like here's an example of the one cap mushroom spawn.
that's
So
what I
it's
got from
just
you.
a
Yeah.
bag of sawdust with some wheat bran for added nutrition,
Hmm.
and the white in here is the fungal mycelium, just a bunch of very fine threads growing through the sawdust. So
Mm.
this is like getting a seed package for your one cap mushrooms. You just need some fungal mycelium. So we call it mushroom spawn. And
Mm.
this is sawdust spawn specifically.
Mm.
So if you don't have a friend who has wine caps growing in their garden, who can
Mm.
just grab a clump out of their garden and give it to you,
Mm.
you would want to get this from a local maybe someone at a farmer's market selling them, or we've got an online store where we ship across Canada from our farm in British Columbia. So
Mm.
you want to start with mushroom spawn, and then it's just simply a matter of crumbling it up and mixing it in with your straw or wood chips in the garden. So I would say wine cap mushrooms is like one of the ones I say great to start with, like a really good entrance point for growing mushrooms outdoors in your garden. The other really easy thing to do is grow directly from a grow kit. So some species like blue oyster mushroom, or the really popular lion's mane mushroom. This is a really great place to get started with just, it's the same thing. It's the fungal mycelium growing within a kit, but instead of going to the extent of planting it out, you can just cut a hole in the bag, put a humidity tent around it that has some air holes, and then mist with a hand sprayer underneath to keep it humid, and you'll get mushrooms popping right out of the bag that look like a
You
cluster of
you
oyster
mean like you
mushrooms.
grow that in your
So
basement or like in under a tree or something like that?
you can do anything with it. I've grown the blue oyster in my house with a humidity tent over it.
Right.
Or if you have a mini greenhouse, you can have that indoors in the shade,
Mm.
or you can have it in your house even. And so, because you want to create a humid environment.
Mm.
And so, one way is hand misting with a
Mm.
spray bottle under a plastic humidity tent.
Mm.
Another way is setting up like a small room humidifier that blows into a little mini greenhouse. And then you can grow mushrooms all winter long indoors. It's
Mm.
not limited to outside in your garden. So
Mm.
if you want to do, maybe you've got some things going indoors for the wintertime, or you want to grow yourself food, it's very versatile in that way. So getting a mushroom kit that you can just cut open and grow inside or outside. I've grown the blue oyster right on my porch.
Mm.
Is a really good in like starting place because it gives you some excitement and experience, and you'll have mushrooms like within weeks.
Yeah, yeah,
If you plant it out in your garden, like the wine caps, it could take 2 months or longer
yeah,
before you get your first flush of mushrooms. The downside of growing out of a kit is it's limited. Like this is all the food that the mushroom mycelium
yeah,
has.
yeah.
And so you'll get some big flushes of mushrooms come out of here, maybe 2 or 4 flushes.
Hmm.
And then it's used up the resources within the bag. It doesn't have any more food.
So
So it's limited.
if you planted that outside, let's say I had like a row of rose bushes that were all mulched, and I just dug a trench about 4 inches deep and put that whole bag there, would they do anything in that environment, or do they need something more humid and more controlled?
No, you can plant mushrooms outdoors. Um, in a garden setting, normally outdoor mushrooms you would want to grow in a shady spot. So it's a great use of shady locations in your garden
Mm.
to grow mushrooms on logs or, like you say, on the ground. You don't even have to dig a trench. You can just put it right on top.
Oh, really?
Um, yep, you can
Oh, so
just
I
put it
didn't have
right
to
on top
dig.
like a
All this digging I did was unnecessary.
yeah,
Oh, okay. I thought I had
exactly.
to
You know, you
bury
could
it, you know.
if you have like a grassy area, you could lay cardboard on top just to suppress the grass from growing, and then put straw or wood chips on it and mix in. There's a variety of different kinds of oyster mushrooms that'll
Hmm.
grow well that way,
We'll
as
see.
well as the wine cap.
Okay.
You can grow it in raised beds, and you can grow it in buckets or containers. The like I was saying, you generally mushrooms because they don't like to dry out. So generally mushrooms you grow in a shady spot. Like my shiitake logs are in the shade.
Mm,
But in a garden setting, you're watering every day, and so you're watering the mycelium
I
that's
see.
growing in the straw. And then if you water extra, or you'll find the mushrooms will come up if it's not wet enough. They might pop up in the microclimate, the micro environments by the
Mm.
shade of the leaves and things like that.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so so that's why you can grow mushrooms in a garden, is because you're watering the area.
Well, and it
And
seems like, I mean, I'm always, I've done tours of my garden, and I've talked about the kind of useless spots where nothing grows because it's
mm-hmm,
too shady. So
mm-hmm.
this is the perfect thing for those useless spots. It's a
Absolutely.
perfect
Yeah. And
environment.
so that would be the third easy thing to do if you have access to some hunks of freshly cut or fallen wood. And generally it's hardwoods that are good for it. Unfortunately for us Canadians, it's typically hardwoods that grow things like the shiitake mushrooms
So
and
it's not rotten wood. It's fresh. It's live,
fresh.
recently live.
Recently live,
Oh,
that's correct. And fall and spring are the best times when the tree's entering dormancy to cut your log,
oh yeah.
or before it comes out of dormancy. So
Okay.
that's the ideal time when the tree nutrients are concentrated in the tree
Mm,
trunk,
yeah.
and the bark's tight to it and going to stay on and protect your log longer.
Oh, the bark's
So
like a saran wrap sort of thing.
yeah, it's
Yeah, yeah.
very important
Just like your
to
bag
keep
there.
to maintain, exactly, very important to maintain the good bark on your mushroom logs as long as you can. So right now for me it's a great time to go out, and if I have some danger trees or whatever, to cut them. I want them fresh because a dead decaying tree is full of other fungal mycelium already.
Right.
So
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
lots of competition in it, and the food's already being consumed by a wild fungi. So
Right.
you want to start with a freshly cut or fallen tree that was a healthy tree. And then
Mm,
a really easy way to grow is I don't know if you can see that.
yeah.
These are little wooden dowels,
Yeah.
and there's white fuzz on them. That
Yeah.
white fuzz is fungal mycelium of the shiitake mushroom.
I see.
So I take these little wooden dowels and I drill holes in my logs. With You can just use any drill bit, but we've got some specialized ones that have do a really fast job at drilling
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
holes in logs. And then you just tap in the wooden dowel, cover the area with some melted wax, and put them in a shady spot that's going to get rain. It does take a long time though before they're
Right.
ready to fruit for the first time. But then you've got a perennial crop. I have shiitake mushroom logs that are 8 years old out
Oh.
there. So they've produced for me. I generally fruit them when the weather's moist and humid here, when
Mm,
like spring and fall. I don't bother with the summertime when it's really dry, but you
right.
could force fruit them in the summertime as well. So they're a great way to use the shady places in your
See.
backyard or garden
This is
space.
just a log laying on the ground. And does the, right? Yes. And does
Yep.
the type of wood, like, is there types of woods you can't use because mushrooms hate it? Like, I don't know, some of these, there's certain trees I know with like locust, trees that don't decompose that are sort of, you know, anyway, yeah, is there any kind, or is there a kind of wood that's ideal? Like, is birch better than maple or maple is better than alder? Or
Yes, yes. The different trees have different properties. So we've got the evergreen conifer trees are not those species that most of the commercially or like commonly cultivated
right.
varieties like shiitake grow on. The shiitake are from Asia, and so we don't have trees from Asia here, but they do
Mm,
grow well in my location on red alder and big leaf maple.
okay.
And across Canada, you're going to look at your hardwoods there, like oak trees, birch trees. That there, every tree species has different qualities. Some are hard or denser wood, like oak trees, and so it might take longer for the fungal mycelium to grow through it, get established, and fruit for your first time.
Mm,
But then you're going to have a lot more years of production out of the log once it is established,
I see.
versus like something like a cottonwood or poplar tree. They
Mm,
grow very quickly. They're almost like paper inside.
mm,
And so the fungal mycelium can colonize that very quickly, produce mushrooms faster, but the tree, you're not going to get as many years of production out of the log.
I
So
see.
definitely tree species matters. We do have a chart that has information about tree species and which
Oh,
mushrooms you can grow on them.
okay. That's all on your
On our
website.
Yeah, we've got
Yeah.
a guide to growing mushrooms on logs. And but it is still something again that I'm interested to um, uh, can to participate with citizen science in growing our information base, because when I was starting to grow my shiitake on logs, I felt like a pioneer in Canada. Like, I don't
Mm,
know, will they grow on the red alder? I there because of the resources and the information is based on the eastern United States.
right.
So there's a lot of information to learn about tree species in Canada.
Yeah.
And then another aspect of that is the conifer trees. I'm also surrounded by a lot of Douglas fir trees and hemlock, and so what can we grow on our conifer trees? And so I've been interested in cloning wild edible mushrooms that grow on conifer trees, like the bear's head. It's just like the lion's mane. Let's see, I've got a lion's mane here. It's just like similar to the lion's mane.
Okay.
So the lion's mane's got like a pom pom of dangling icicle teeth,
Mm,
and so the bear's head grows on our conifer trees here in the wild. And so I found one, a massive one, and I've cloned it. So I took a little piece of it and I put it on a petri dish with agar and started a clone so that we can develop a culture bank of Canadian wild edible species that we can
mm,
grow on conifer trees.
right. Right. That's really cool. Yeah, because that's the challenge, eh?
It is.
I mean, there's lots of things that grow on conifer trees, but they're all no good. Or even I remember when I was with that expert, I'd say, "Is this edible? Is that edible?" Blah blah blah. He goes, "Well, you got to know to distinguish between edible and taste good." So I said,
True.
"There's some mushrooms are edible, but they don't taste that good. They just won't kill you."
Right.
So the ones we tend to prize are the ones that like the chanterelle. It's
Yes.
edible, but it also tastes really good.
Yes.
Um, yeah, yeah. Um,
Texture really matters too to me. Like,
right.
and so in terms of like, what's your favorite mushroom? Everyone's going to have a different answer.
Yeah.
My neighbor across the road, I had such an abundance of the one cat mushrooms. I gave her some, and she says, "This is the best mushroom I've ever had." Um, I'm more, I like really firm fleshed
I
mushrooms,
like
like
those
king
too.
oyster, and in the wild, I like hedgehogs.
Mm.
So yeah, so everyone's got different tastes, and I'd say it's taste, and then it's also texture of mushrooms matter.
I noticed the wine cap. Yeah, it's got a very high water content,
Yes,
and yeah, I sort of cook it longer. I remember cooking it for quite a while before I actually added a little bit of red wine just to make it kind of fancy and nice. But as it was when it was just in the pan, there was a lot of water in there that I wanted to
definitely.
boil off to get it a bit less wet. But the taste
Yes.
is good. But yeah, it's just different than uh,
And then there's different
other types.
harvesting at different stages matters,
Mm,
and what the environment, like how much it's rained, will matter. If you harvest the wine cap at a young stage, that big wide cap is still curled under,
yeah, I think I got one
and
here.
it's not exposing the gills yet. And those are considered like at their prime for eating, and they would be drier than the big wide open caps. And also, there's if you harvest them young,
Here's the
there's less chance for
contrast. So
bugs.
there's a big open one with all
Yep.
those things that fallen off at the bottom, those little things that pop down. And here's a much more immature one. Uh,
Take a look at the turn it so you can see the underside. Is it? Yeah, it's just that tissue is still covering the gills in most of the area, but it's
yeah,
still huge.
I know. But yeah, this I assume would be more dense.
Yes,
Um,
it's more dense, and it's less chance for bugs and things, slugs to get at them if you
that's what
harvest
I'm
them.
noticing, that I want to almost be out there. Jesus, a slug on this thing right now. I got to deal with that. Anyway, I just picked
Yeah,
that today. But I noticed like there's the slugs love them.
absolutely.
So I have to be on them. But there's a certain value in picking them when they're immature, like especially if you have a lot of them, because you're going to
Yes,
get a firmer mushroom and less slug damage.
yes.
There's a big old slug on that guy. I better deal with that. Um,
Well, that slug can stay put while we chat.
yeah, you can enjoy the last few moments of his life. Yeah, probably a salty death waiting for him. Um, I got a lot of slugs in the garden. I'm surprised with all the things in my garden that eat slugs. Like there's so many birds and different things like that. That I got the garter snakes and yeah,
Hmm.
toads, and it has zero effect on the slug population.
Yes,
Just
slugs are
infinite
a
slugs.
big problem in my garden as well.
I just love it out there. Despite everything is trying to kill them, and there's lots of them. Um, okay, next question here. Um, I'm just gonna. Someone asked, "What's the Oh, that's probably a good one. And I mean, what's the best medium? Is there a best medium? Does the medium depend on the mushroom? That sort of thing. Yeah, that could be a whole podcast probably in and of itself. But maybe just so if someone wants to grow mushrooms, I got a neighbor that's thinking about this. Uh, like they go to the hardware store, should they buy this kind of wood chip or that kind of? They probably don't want to get the dyed wood chips, I'm going to guess. Yeah, what should they get
Yes.
manure? Like, should they have a layer of this and a layer of that? What should they do?
It does depend on the species of mushroom, what the
Right.
preferred substrate is, or how flexible they are in terms of their diet and what they want to eat. I was mentioning the oyster mushroom has quite a voracious appetite. It'll eat all sorts of different agricultural waste products.
Hmm.
So you can feed it, like you can grow an oyster mushroom on hardwood trees that you've cut or have recently fallen, on straw, wood chips, hardwood chips, and coffee grounds, or if you've got like some uh, foliage from your garden, potentially, you can
Hmm.
try feeding it all sorts of things. Whereas some other species like shiitake is much more um, limited in what you can grow it on. You don't grow it on straw, for instance. You would grow it. It does best, I find, in logs because it's
Hmm.
such a slow grower. It takes, if you were to grow it in hardwood sawdust, then it takes like 4 to 5 months before it's actually ready to fruit for the first time.
Mm,
So growing it and that just gives a lot of time for problems to arise because there's a lot of competition out there in the wild. Like the air is full of mold spores and things
mm,
at all times. And
yeah.
mold likes to grow in the same environment as mushrooms or fungal mycelium. It likes
Okay.
damp, wet, humid areas. And so that's the bane of mushroom growing is ending up with something going moldy instead of mycelium.
Mm,
So yeah, the type of substrate really matters, depending on what species of mushroom you want to grow.
right.
And another substrate that's quite easy to access is the hardwood pellets. So they're
Mm,
often bought for pellet stoves
yeah.
to burn as fuel, but they are, at least the brands that we get, is just pure compressed sawdust. It doesn't have any chemicals in the processing or making of it. So you just basically you just buy a bag of hardwood pellets and add some water, and you've got a bucket full of sawdust you can grow in. And
Oh,
that would be a good species to grow, a good thing for growing like a lion's mane mushroom,
mm,
which also isn't as accepting as the oyster mushroom to various food sources. So lion's mane you'd want to grow on wood chips, hardwood chips, or hardwood sawdust.
okay. Could someone do that like on a deck of an apartment building? Would that be
Oh
possible?
yeah,
Just a flower
absolutely.
pot, yeah,
Yeah, in a flower
little
pot.
shady
But
corner.
lots of people grow mushrooms in buckets. So they'll get a big 5 gallon bucket. They'll drill holes around the outside of the bucket, and
Oh,
then
they come out.
yeah, so they drill the holes. That's where the mushrooms will emerge,
Ah,
and then they fill the bucket with straw or sawdust or wood chips and mixed with the mushroom spawn.
ah, yeah,
Put the lid back on and just let it sit for a few weeks or 3 to 6 weeks, and then you'll have mushrooms emerging out the holes.
wow,
Um, Now, again, for the mushrooms to emerge, it needs to be a humid environment.
right.
So you want to keep that bucket in the shade, or and when it's fully white with mycelium inside and ready to fruit. And if it's not fruiting, that's why. It's because it's drying out on that outside edge, and it needs to be moist there. So you can do things like just I've just had like plastic shelving, and I've put up some buckets on plastic shelves and just draped a clear plastic over them, and then take my hose and just spray all the walls inside, just to create that humid environment,
Mm,
and locate it in the shade ideally.
mm, wow. Okay, so yeah, this is a great thing. Like not just people like I've got a gigantic backyard and all kinds of space and room, but you could have much less than that, and less than ideal. I'm always talking about sun. You got to have sun. Sun's everything.
Right, right.
Sun's the whole deal. And here's if you got a really lousy property, and you can't grow tomatoes and you can't grow pepper, you can't grow anything, except like rhubarb or something like that. Um, you can grow mushrooms. You can be really good at. Maybe you can. Sure, you got a neighbor that has a great spot for tomatoes. You can trade them delicious mushrooms for their delicious tomatoes.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. Um, I'm going to skip a couple questions here because we're running short on time.
Okay.
One of the questions a viewer asked was, can mushrooms cross-pollinate? Does that pose a risk? So let's say I've got my wine caps in my backyard, and there's something in the forest that's unbelievably deadly, and they create some love child that kills my whole family. Is that possible?
No.
No. Okay.
That's not really going to happen.
All right.
The the um the We're going to be growing from the clone of the fungal
Clone.
mycelium, and the yeah, that's what makes a species, is that they interbreed from within their species. So there's like the deadly amanita mushrooms are not going to cross pollinate with your wine cap mushrooms spores and make
Right.
a new love child there.
So the mushroom makes its own. The mushroom doesn't get. Um, yeah, it doesn't get fertilized. Does it fertilize itself, kind of thing?
The spores in the mushroom, like I said, are like the seeds, kind of comparable to seeds in a
Yeah.
plant. And the spores, there's a more complicated life cycle for the
Okay.
mushroom than a plant. But the spores will land. I think they start to germinate. They got to find another like fungal mycelium, and then they do some fusing, and the nucleuses go together. And it's a little bit more complicated in the fungal world, the reproduction.
Right. But the risk of cross-pollination, it's the wrong term, I guess,
Yeah, so
compared to what
seed
happens in
saving,
there.
like you do with plants, like if you wanted to seed your bean seeds and share them with a neighbor, it's not really. I mean, you could collect the spores of a mushroom, and so there's a wine cap that I have on a piece of white paper, and I got
Mm.
the spores dropped out of the cap and left that
Mm.
black. So this has the potential to make wine cap mushrooms. I could, mail this to a friend and say, "Hey, try planting this in your garden." But
Mm.
there's a lot. It's kind of not as likely that you'll have success as if you start with a bag of spawn, because there's a
Mm.
lot that has to happen for these to germinate and grow and outcompete whatever is also there,
Mm.
and be successful.
Mm.
Um, so it's kind of, but it does have the capacity to grow mushrooms from those spores.
Right. Oh, so when anywhere near my garden, these things could start popping up all over the place, and potentially, assuming I'm not picking them before they. My plan is to pick them, earlier on. Although I did notice uh, one seemed to have just disintegrate before I got to it. Um,
Yes,
but if we're moving just the roots and that sort of thing, those are clones. We're cloning, right?
that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so then you zero risk doing it that way. Um, Okay, I think we got that question dealt with. Can I propagate my own? Yes. Okay, so we answered the hell out of that one. Um, so we got two more questions here, and then we gotta go. So this is a big long question here. I'm just gonna read it because I wasn't quite sure how to summarize this. Um, I'm gonna try to keep it short. Um, Person, I'd like to grow mushrooms in old wood chips under a blue spruce tree in a darkish corner of my yard. This guy's in Colorado. Um, and possibly in old tree trunk sections. However, having never done this, I'm not sure what the best variety would be for the wood chips, and I don't know whether I can grow any mushrooms at all in the logs since they're from a pine tree.
Right.
The logs are several years old, and they're dry. I still don't know if pines work. Not sure if this helps. Asking good questions. So it sounds like the guy's got pine trees.
So
Um,
yeah, so there's
yeah,
multiple challenges there, and not a great starting place because
yeah.
one, the word old means
Yes.
that it's had a lot of time for spores in the air to land on it from wild fungus and start to decay. You can't see that necessarily, what's
Yeah.
happening inside of these old stumps or logs, but there's going to be some other things already inhabiting those, as well as the species. It's a pine. So, maybe you could plant something like a bear's head Hericium species on it. But there's not too many commonly cultivated mushrooms species that we would grow on a pine tree.
Right. So your advice to him would be,
But the shady location, that's a plus.
yeah,
Uh,
he said I got grow mushrooms old under a blue spruce tree what'd you say? Old wood chips under a blue spruce tree in a
yeah,
darkish corner of my Colorado yard. So
yeah, again,
on the
old wood
ground.
chip. The species of wood chips matters. For wine cap, you can plant a mixture. There can be some conifer wood chips in there.
Mm-hmm,
They say up to a maximum of 50% conifer wood chips.
mm-hmm,
But your best success is going to be with hardwood chips. So I'd say that person has a good location for growing mushrooms, a shady location. Um, but you don't want to invest lots in something that is not going to necessarily be as successful. So if they had a neighbor that had wine caps in their garden and were willing to give them a big clump of mycelium, I'd say go for it. But if you're going to invest and buy a bag of spawn, and then I would say get your hands on some fresh wood chips and
mm-hmm.
the fuel pellets for sawdust, and start fresh. So you're going to have a really good success rate.
Okay. Last question. Where can I buy them? Where can people
Um,
get?
well, back in 2015 when I was trying to grow shiitake logs, I couldn't find mushroom spawn anywhere, but times have changed.
Right.
So if you check out your local farmers market, you might find that you've got some vendors selling mushrooms they've grown. Maybe they have bags, maybe they have grow kits or sawdust spawn like this
Mm-hmm.
that you can get from them. Some of the stores are carrying a few varieties now, and our farm's got an online store, growmushroomscanada.ca. So we do ship across Canada. And so if you're not able to find it locally, then you're welcome to come check out what we've got. And we've got lots of resources too. So we've got beginner's growing guide and guide to growing on logs and guide for growing wine caps. So it's really important to help people have success because it is such a different and new thing for people.
And is it too late to plant them now? Depending on where you
Great
are in Canada, but
question.
yeah,
The surprisingly, there is still time to plant now. You do want to have a window before like you get really hard freezes and stuff. But the fall is a good time to as the trees start to enter dormancy. So maybe about a third of the canopy's turning color. That's a good time if the tree has to come down anyways. Take it down now and plant it using either those wooden dowels with spawn on it or the sawdust spawn. So you can plant your mushrooms on logs in the fall, as well as establish your outdoor wine cap beds now. It's a
mm,
good time. There's some time for it to start growing, then put a nice layer of mulch on it. And then if you start it now, you're going to get the earliest harvest in the spring. So you're going to get the most mushrooms after the winter melt. You're going to get your most production starting super early next spring. So it's actually
right,
a really good time for that. But otherwise, you're also got the options to grow indoors all winter long.
right. Okay. So, and people can buy them from you. Do you get any sort of deal you're running right now?
Yeah, we've
Fall
got
deal or
a
something?
coupon code for your listeners,
Okay.
and it Maritime 10. So I
Maritime
can
10.
give you that to post. And yeah, we're at growmushroomscanada.ca and
Okay.
welcome all sorts of questions.
Okay. We'll put all the details in the description box of this video. Let's get you to email me those details.
Yeah, sorry, I guess I didn't say this. It's a 10 for it's 10% off.
10%. Okay, great. Okay, that's great. No, I'm sure some people will avail themselves of that. I mean, look at this. So, I mean, I planted these, and what's the kit for? Just so people know what the I'm gonna really recommend these wine caps because they're idiot
Yeah,
proof.
the one
Um,
cap, it's the we've got them on sale right now for $29.
29 bucks. I paid more than
Yeah.
that. So I bought them in May or whenever, April or May.
Yeah, we've got a big liquidation sale on right now. So I think they're
That's great.
regularly 37 for
Wow.
the wine cap.
Yeah, yeah. We get them while they're hot. No,
But it is like an unlimited amount of mushrooms. So did you plant those this year?
I planted them in the spring, and I honestly, I don't think I'd be surprised if the wood chips are 50% conifer. I'd have to think they're like almost. I mean, they're just the wood chips that they dumped in the driveway. Uh, like most of the wood, like I didn't ask. I just, I got what they have, right?
Yes,
It's from
yes.
branches, from arborists, right? So
Yeah.
uh, I would be very surprised if it was 50% conifer. I'd gamble that they're more like 80% conifer,
Yeah, it could be.
but it
And
still works,
that's part of the collective learning, right?
Yeah,
How far
yeah,
can
yeah,
we push it? There's like we don't want to stay with the knowledge that's out there. We want to learn from each other and share that
yeah,
knowledge so that we can all be better growers and
yeah.
more
I mean, I don't
successful.
know. That could all be birch. I don't know what it is, but I had no idea what they are.
But
And
you
I
got a
mean,
lot of mushrooms.
look at this thing. Look at this thing. It's bigger than my head. So, uh, yeah, it's great. Okay, Jessica. Well, this has been great. Maybe we can do this again sometime. We could come up with some more interesting questions. Maybe we can get into. Maybe we could do another recording into the winter or later on about these more technical indoor approaches.
For
Because I
sure.
think that requires a bit more time. I think that'd be a great.
Yeah,
I think a lot
there's
of people would be
that's
interested
right.
in that.
We just scratched the surface of the
Yeah, yeah.
topic for sure, and there's lots more more we can investigate together.
Absolutely. Okay, great. Everybody, I hope you found this interesting. I know I did. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. Check out my podcast, maritimegardening.com. Check out my articles at maritimegardening.substack.com. And until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden. Jessica, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having us.
Great.